Welcome to the MetaView podcast, a podcast where we ask people shit and they answer. Let's get into it.
Do you believe it's morning? I'm alive, but that's the last thing on my mind. Do you believe it's morning?
Welcome, Kevin. A long time no see.
That's good.
What have you been up to?
I got two kids at home, so spending time with them is obviously a priority. I actually had my son was born in East Denver this year, so he's an East Denver baby, and he's 7 months old now, learning to crawl. And then on the Gitcoin front, we are just trying to give more money to open source software developers. So our mission is to grow and sustain open source software and connect software developers to funding for their work. And this month we're going to do $600K worth of rewards for open source software developers, like those people who can live off of Gitcoin. So just trying to get more money going through the platform, more money to Ethereum developers is basically what we've been up to work-wise.
Awesome. Can you just give a quick intro on the CLR, just in case there are people who
haven't heard of it?
Yeah.
So our mission is to grow and sustain open source, and we have this product called Gitcoin Grants, which is basically like a crypto Patreon, where if you're an open source software developer, or really like anyone in the Ethereum community that's contributing to the public good means something that's non-excludable and non-rivalrous, as opposed to like a consumer good, like a sports car or like something you can get on Amazon. A public good is something like clean air or open source software or privacy, like something that everyone derives benefit from just by like living on planet Earth or being a citizen of the internet. So Gitcoin Grants is all about how do you fund projects that are contributing to the public good. And it's a crypto style Patreon where every quarter we run a matching round. And that matching round is then paired with a crowdfunding round where we match contributions in the crowdfunding round according to this formula called quadratic funding. And quadratic funding basically optimizes for the poor and the many, the preferences of the poor and the many as opposed to the rich and the few. So like as a tangible example of that is that if one grant raises $10 from 10 contributors and another grant raises $10 from one contributor, then that first grant will get way more of the matching funds because we optimize again for the poor and the many, not the rich and the few. So it's like a more democratic way of matching crowdfunding projects. And so far, Gitcoin Grants has done like $3.5 million worth of funding to open source developers in the Ethereum ecosystem. And that's kind of what we're known for. Gitcoin's known for Gitcoin Grants.
Awesome. Yeah, I love the part where it's not about the amount of money received, but the amount of people that gave it.
Yeah, and I think that I don't know how far down this rabbit hole we want to go, but like really, if you think about it one level up, you're kind of voting with your identity more so than your money in the matching rounds. And so we just did a integration with Bright ID, where if you're Bright ID verified, then you get more of the matching funds. And I think that that's really cool because Bright ID is a DID, a digital identity provider, that stands for decentralized identity provider. And they grew their network of verified users like 10x during the Gitcoin grant round, something like that. And so I'm really excited about partnering with these different digital identity systems and creating like these economic games where people get verified as unique humans in them. And then what does that enable for the next epoch of the blockchain-based internet? Like we could basically go from one CPU, one vote to one human, one vote. And that enables a lot of like digital democracy, and the design space there is really exciting to me right now.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this as well because, the current trend is all about token voting, and it's just like, we're just recreating the shareholder economies.
I'd love to hear how your SourceCred experiment with Metagame is going. I've been following SourceCred for a long time, and I think if you're going to have tokenized systems, then I think that SourceCred, where you reward value creation with value capture through the token, I think is like a really interesting way of sort of like growing a community. So I'd be curious to hear how that's going on your end.
Yeah, we're kind of like funding the public goods at a lower level of the stack. So instead of trying to get the funds that already exist, we basically just create money on the spot by people voting on something that they value.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty good because it also allows us to like instead of having it focused on things that just create economic return, it's pretty subjective, and it just depends on what the community values, and what the community values, that's how money gets made. And like in our system, the only way to create money is through contributing labor. So the only way for people to invest in metagame is to buy seeds from the people who created them with work. And so that's also makes it so that people are not buying tokens whose money will be used to create something. They're buying tokens which are already like a result of creating something.
Yeah. What I think is cool is like we're trying to move from proof of work to proof of knowledge work, where basically like you can reward labor of a human, not just labor of a CPU chip or a GPU chip in the case of a lot of these crypto networks, or an ASIC. And to me, where that gets really hard is like, how do you prove the value of knowledge work? Like the code that I wrote this morning, I don't know if it'll get shipped to production. And if it does get shipped to production, what's the value that's created from it? And I think that SourceCred, it uses EdgeRank in order to measure like what are the members of the community in your community value of the work that you've done, and uses that metadata to reward the tokens. And I think that that's a really interesting, elegant way of solving the what do we value question.
Yeah, so you've been playing with SourceCred as well?
We've been playing with SourceCred. I've been in touch with Dandelion for almost 2 years now, and it's cool to see new implementations of EdgeRank that are for humans, not just for search results. I hope to see it grow and proliferate. We're experimenting with like of the Gitcoin contributors to our code base. We've had 300 people contribute to the Gitcoin code base. Who has contributed the most value according to the SourceCred plugin? That's an analysis that we're running right now, just to kind of see who's produced the most value. So I'll be curious to see what comes back from that.
How long has that been going?
It's been dragging on for about 5 months. We did the integration, and then between our two code bases, and then the contributor that I was working with had some other priority or like health thing, and we just picked it up recently again. So I'm hoping to have some results in the next couple of months because we have someone new and reliable on the project. So we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to hearing like what are your thoughts on it. Like, do you think if it like allocated the value properly and all of that?
It's a subjective question. We need proof of work. What is the objective value of this?
Yeah, I guess your thinking will also be subjective.
Yeah.
And have you been doing these CLR rounds more often, or does it just seem that way?
So one of our design goals is that the community can rely on Gitcoin grants. And so we've been aiming at doing them about every 2.5 months, every 3 months. And the idea is that just, every couple of months, like clockwork, you can expect the Ethereum community will learn about your project and fund your project. And stability is a feature, right? Because like then you can sort of say like, oh, I'm not going to go work on this for-profit project. I'm going to go work for the public good because I know the community will get me back during the next Gitcoin Grants round. But to answer your question, it's just every quarter.
Right. Like you've been also talking about these quadratic freelancers. We thought about introducing a category that's for people, not just for the projects. I mean, there already are like a few personal grants pretty much.
Yeah. So Quadratic Freelancer is someone who can just work for the open internet, funded by Quadratic subsidies. And, like the threshold for that is that if you need to $60K USD per year, then basically you just have to make like $15K for Gitcoin Grants round, something like that. And so I think there's a couple of Quadratic Freelancers right now, but the idea is to create hundreds of them because it really shifts the incentive where, like, instead of going to work on some for-profit project, you can go work for the open internet and work for public good, which is the incentive structure that we want to create. And that's one of our design goals is to create more Quadratic Freelancers. Sorry, I forget what your question was about Quadratic Freelancer in the process of explaining it.
Oh, yeah. Do you plan on introducing a category that's specifically for people?
We haven't talked about that. The taxonomy of Gitcoin Grants right now is like infrastructure tech, staff tech, and then community. And I think that another way to slice it is this an organization or a DAO, or is this a person? And I think that we should take a look at that. It's an interesting idea.
Yeah, there's not many of those, but there were like even Van Ness, for example, his newsletter, or the Samsung like white hacking grant is also personal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I guess it depends on how many of them are there. Like if there's just a few of them, then it doesn't make much sense to create a category. But yeah.
Yeah, those are like the all-stars of Gitcoin grants. I know both Evan and Sam, and they both contribute a lot to the community, so I'm glad that they're always at the top of the rankings. The algorithm sort of like validates. You can look at Vitalik's review of Gitcoin grants for the last 4 rounds and kind of compare and contrast, oh, are these the projects that I think are actually valuable? Is the algorithm spitting it out? And it doesn't always get it all the way right, but I think that it gets it right more often than not. So I'm proud that Sam and Evan and like EPUB and Bankless are at the top of the rounds.
Yeah. Were there any like problematic projects? Like I remember in the last round there was one scam that was like obviously a scam, but like previously I haven't seen much of those like people trying to game the system.
Yeah, we did have what's the name of that? DAP University. They had someone impersonate Greg from DAP University, like made a fake Gitcoin profile with his like photo and made a DAP University, and they raised like $300 before the community flagged the grant and flagged it as an invalid grant, as a fraud. And so we introduced in the following round this Twitter verification tool where you could like verify ownership of a Twitter account. And the idea there was that like that the DAP University fraud wouldn't have happened if everyone had their Twitter account verified on Gitcoin grants. So the idea was to create more trust there, and we didn't have any more frauds of that type in round 7, except for one person who went and created a new Twitter handle for the project they were impersonating. I forget what project it was. And so basically like they created a new Twitter handle with 0 followers that had that project identity. And so I think we're gonna have to figure out how to stamp out that kind of fraud in upcoming rounds. But we ran a 500K round, and that project raised on the order of $100. So I mean, it's not unimportant to solve that problem, but it is in like the grand scheme of things, I think, something we need to take care of. But it's not an existential threat to Gitcoin grants, in my view.
Right. Yeah, I guess they also like they are aware that it's not so easy to game because like your Gitcoin like GitHub account is fresh.
Yeah.
Or like after the round ends, like humans decide like which projects get the money and which don't. Like.
Yeah. Well, we have this thing that we called Sybil Score, which basically looks at we set up a series of automated tripwires in the system that will give you a high Sybil score if your GitHub account is new, or we have a series of other tripwires. And if the average Sybil score of contributors to a Gitcoin grant is much higher than the median for the round, then we do typically go take a look at it and see what's going on here. But yeah, for the most part, the winning grants have had pretty low Sybil scores, and so I think that we owe the Bright ID integration for that. Bright ID and Twitter verification has been a good combo so far.
Right. Yeah, Bright ID did seem like a good solution.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's an iterative process. Quadratic funding is gameable, and so we just try to get better at making it less gameable every single iteration. So we've done 7 rounds. We'll have done 8 in December. So it's all about trying to just make it suck less each round, make it more hardened each round, and hopefully eventually we'll be able to be doing over $1 million per round because it'll be so hardened. But it's just it's like that iteration cycle. You make a hypothesis and then you test it out and then you gather data and then you just go through that cycle every single time. I'm a big fan of doing that in open research problems.
Yeah, makes sense. And yeah, I noticed the runs have been getting like bigger and bigger. Like you started with what is it like 100K and now it's 500,000.
Yeah, we started with 25K actually, and now it's 500,000.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting experience, and I'm super thankful that Consensus funds Gitcoin, honestly, because I would be able to marshal the resources towards this and focus so much resources on iterating it if it weren't for Joe and Consensus believing in Gitcoin. So it takes a village for sure, but super thankful to them and to the community for embracing Gitcoin grants.
That's what I liked about the last few, like at least 2 rounds. that it's not so much about like consensus and Ethereum Foundation. There are a lot more like people giving in funds than just consensus and Ethereum Foundation.
Yeah. The funny thing about that is that people think that consensus and the Ethereum Foundation have been funding the grants, but it's mostly been the Ethereum Foundation funding the grant rounds. Consensus just pays our salaries to work on Gitcoin. So they've actually never really funded a Gitcoin grants round. But it's like a muddled story that I don't think gets out there on Twitter. Like they just pay our salaries. They don't fund the grant rounds. And like Consensus is becoming a for-profit organization. It's not the same Consensus as it was in 2017 when they were funding a whole lot more projects and there was a whole lot less of a focus on profit back in 2017.
Yeah, Consensus definitely was like funding a lot more experiments previously, but
but now we have decentralized funding of experiments with Gitcoin grants and with other experiments in funding public goods. I'm also following CLR Fund. I'm following what Metagame is doing, and I really like what you're doing, Pete, with Metagame. SourceThreads, obviously very promising for me. And then the fact that DeFi projects have their own business models built into their economic systems, I think is really exciting also. So there's a diversity of ways that the ecosystem's funding itself, and I'm curious to see how that evolves over time, how it matures, hopefully.
Yeah, I've been personally been a bit annoyed with all this focus on DeFi.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's progress.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit, like I followed Metagame and like you're kind of like creating an infinite game where the goal is to grow Metagame, but then there's also these like positive externalities of people meeting each other, of people building infrastructure for community, but it's like an infinite game that grows Metagame. And so I think that's cool. It's like an infinite game that's programmed with a different replication function than quadratic funding is. But I always kind of look at your stuff and think that it's neat what you're doing. So like, what's your end game with Metagame? I'd love to compare and contrast with Gitcoin.
Yeah, I guess there are like two things that it ends up with. One is this huge community of people that are into doing any kind of thing that like helps change the world for the better.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there are three phases, and with each phase it like goes further away from crypto and it like real world problems and other like high tech branches. But yeah, the end goal of the metagame itself. So on one end is creating this alternative society that has like connected all of these pockets of alternative economies that like these co-living spaces, eco villages, regen villages, and things like that, where people could like a alternative society where people can find a place to live and do work, earn money, everything they need to do. And then on the other side is producing this thing that would be called like a meta frame, which would be like an open source framework for running societies. So in theory, like basically make it so that other people can start their own meta games and hopefully keep them interoperable.
What I think is cool is that like, so you have this North Star of this sort of alternative society that you want to build, but you've built like almost like a replication function that pulls people in and then like helps them along their journey of A, understanding the metagame, and then B, contributing to their part of the metagame. And like I think it's like you've like gamified onboarding into the DAO a little bit, which is like the interesting novel piece here. Like there's a ton of people who want to do seed-setting and create alternative societies, but the reason why there's action in metagame is because we now have coordination mechanisms through Ethereum, and you've built like a gamified way of rewarding people as they're on the right track, like the breadcrumbs almost for building it. As I understand it from the outside, I haven't had a ton of time to go through the onboarding myself, but
yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I would just say that it's not just about contributing to metagame itself. So we also want people who are just doing cool things. So like if you have a cool project, we can have you on and like see how it fits together with metagame. So like try to attract all of these different building blocks of this alternative society. So there are players and guilds are projects. But it's also like about supporting people like find anything else to do in crypto. Like for now it's just focus on crypto, but just if you're coming from outside crypto, like help them see in which way crypto like could help them. Like do they take the NFT path? Are they interested in DeFi or DAOs or what? And like help them get on their way of just finding their place in the crypto space.
finding your place in the crypto space. I like that.
Yeah, and then hopefully they contribute their knowledge back on like helping us build, for example, the skill trees. So I went on my way and learned things, and now I'm back to add knowledge and help other people that are coming and learn things.
I have a couple I don't know which. I have like so many directions I want to go. The finding the place in the crypto space is really super important. A lot of people don't know this, but like back in 2017, when I decided I wanted to do crypto, I applied to Open Zeppelin, I applied to Consensus. I was rejected from Consensus like 4 times until I finally got an intro to Joe. And like only because I've been doing tech startups for like 12 years, I had a friend who was working for Joe and like knew that I was legit, and he wouldn't mind putting an intro in front of Joe for me. But like for most people who have less experience than me, or were just like less persistent, like finding like once I was in Consensus, like once I got Joe to fund Gitcoin, I was like in the club. Like I felt like I had a home in crypto. But I've been a community organizer here in Boulder for 5 years, and one of the things the Andrew Hyde, the main community organizer of Boulder Startup Week, told me is like, make sure you greet all of your attendees at the door, shake their hands, look them in the eye, say, how are you today? Do you need anything? Like, excited to see you at this event. Just like make them feel at home in your event. And I feel like there's a digital equivalent of that with like DAOs aren't just about tokens and governance, but they're about that community and making sure that each individual member of the ecosystem feels welcomed. And so I always remember that, like when I'm trying to build Gitcoin's onboarding, and we haven't really totally nailed it, but I think that it's cool that you're focused on that at Metagame as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important, like this whole community part. And like even if it's about money for you, then it has to be about the community if you're building open source, because community is like the only defensible moat that you have.
Yeah.
So I think definitely there will be a lot more community focused projects.
Yeah. And no judgment if it is about money. Like I have a mortgage, and like I said, I have 2 kids. Like if my work didn't pay my bills, then it would be a hard choice for me. So like no judgment if it is about money. Have you heard about bentoism at all?
I know the word, but I can't connect it.
Yeah, so basically there's this idea of bentoism, which is basically like modern markets will make a decision, or like markets or like people can, if you're an agent in an economic system, it's this theory that sort of identifies that what are you optimizing for? If you're optimizing for now me, what's going to gratify my needs now, then you're not really getting the entire picture of what you could optimize for. So basically, you can expand now me into now us. So like, how do I optimize for something that's good for me and peth, and like Gitcoin and Metagame now. And then the other direction you can take it is temporal. So basically, future me and future us. So you get this bento box where it's not just now me, but it's now us, future me, and future us is like the 4 boxes of the bento. And it's like when you're designing a system, but what made me think about this is like, are you working on something for the community, or are you working on it for money? Like if you're working on something for money, then that's like now me and future me. But if you're doing it for the community also, then you're also doing it for now us and future us. And there's that externality. Like you don't want to create negative externalities in that side of the bento box. You want to create positive externalities as you're like paying your bills or whatever. And I think that like for me, this is all about like taking the negative externalities of like capitalism before coordination mechanisms and creating positive externalities, because those all compound on each other. So I don't know, bentoism is something that I've been into a lot recently as I think about the theory of coordination mechanisms.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, so I kind of see that both in Metagame and in Gitcoin Grants. I think that's neat.
Yeah, I think it becomes obvious, I guess, when people are just after the money and like not giving others enough credit, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
and like for me, like Metagame has been like a huge opportunity cost, which is part of the reason why I'm annoyed by all this thing happening in DeFi, because first I got the opportunity cost of not working on anything that actually pays.
Yeah.
Because I've been getting these seeds, but my seeds are worth like 20K, and I've been working for a year for 20K.
Yeah.
And if I decided to sell them, I couldn't sell them because they're not very
not enough liquidity. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's a really huge opportunity cost, but I think it's just the right thing to do. And like it will all be fine.
Yeah. Well, I think that like this is where the difference between like being a founder or something, I think, and like being a latecomer is. So I think that like you probably have more seeds than almost anyone because like and rightfully so, you should, because you've created the most value for metagame. But like I think that if metagame grows, then there's an exponential growth to these information systems as they get more adoption. And so like the 20K now versus like the hypothetical value of the future of that 20K is like the arbitrage that you're sort of thinking of. Whereas like if you're a latecomer to a project, you bear less risk, but you also get less of that like exponential reward. By the way, I've been doing startups for like 12 years, and like my options for every startup have never been worth anything. So like I've played that game before, I know it. But the nice thing about crypto is that like in startups you have a returns waterfall where it's like the founder that and the employees at the bottom, and then the Series Seed investors, and then the Series A investors, and the Series B investors, and everyone gets paid out before you do. If you and like what's cool about crypto is that it's just like less. I mean, not all projects are like this, but you can design systems where the returns waterfall is like a little bit more equal between the capital and labor, and the balance between capital and labor is something that I'm super interested in exploring the design space of.
Yeah, I just wanted to say like for the first time ever, like with SourceCred, actually the system is biased towards the people who come in like in the maybe not like a late wave, but like a not right away because it's based on page rank. So like when I give a thumbs up to someone, it gives them a lot of seeds, but when somebody gives a thumbs up to me, it doesn't. But also because there's a limit to like what the source code can actually track, so it doesn't like do a very good job of doing tracking like the small things and like the the soft stuff.
Yeah, there's a balance there between like data entry. So you want to create this semantic web of what things people find valuable, but you also don't want to make people into like data entry clerks, right? And so there's like a trade-off between those concerns. And I think, yeah, if you can find a metadata trail that's already being created that matches your value system, then I think that you've hit the jackpot in terms of creating these token systems. But I mean, I think what SourceCred kind of does that. It like takes you're already liking stuff and you're already commenting on stuff, so I think that it already sort of leverages that. But maybe you like I don't know, you played metagame more than me. Are people more serious, like studious about what they like in metagame than they would be on like Facebook or I think like likes are like the ultimate shitcoin because you have a million of them, right? Are people more like studious about what they like in metagame?
Yeah, Decentraland said that at some point they introduced it so that when upvoting something, you don't just create XP, you also flow some of your own. Notice like a 30% or something a drop in the amount that people were doing it, so there was less cred flowing. I think they ended up removing that, but I'm not sure.
I think that friction in some ways is a feature, not a bug. Like with quadratic funding, like you're only voting for a project to get funding if you're opening up your own wallet and funding that project, right? So I think that there's an interesting dynamic there where like that vote is costly to you, and therefore like you would only be making that costly vote if you actually cared about that project.
Right.
And so I think that like in some systems it's a feature, not a bug to have that. But quadratic funding has other problems that are unrelated to that. But I think in this context that it's an interesting comparison.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, let's move on from these community economics onto like interoperability and like what could we do like that would benefit both projects. And I see like you already wanted to say something, so feel free.
Well, I was gonna say like I know Metagame has a Gitcoin grant, so like level 1 interoperability achieved. But I'd love to brainstorm what like level 6 interoperability looks like because I think that there's probably some fruitful ground there.
And for example, your profiles. We were having this call about these decentralized profiles, interoperable. So we had Raid Guild, One Hive, Metagame, and Treebox. And we're all basing our profiles on Treebox. And that might be one way, like to make these profiles more interoperable.
Sure.
Like if you plan on having like a MetaMask login or 3box login.
Yeah, for sure. I actually think that the 3box login could be an interesting source of Sybil resistance for Gitcoin grants. Like if you have built up a whole profile of 3box, then it's less likely than you're just like a sock puppet account that's being made to create a grant. So like Gitcoin could derive value from 3box there. One of the things that I've wanted to do is give back to 3box all of the Gitcoin data, like subject to the users giving consent for doing that. And we put this little like widget on the Gitcoin profile where you could turn it on, where it would upload all of your data to 3box. I have no idea whether or not it's been used. I have no data about how many people have it enabled or how much data has been uploaded. But I know that Danny Zuckerman from 3box told me that they're updating from 3box to Ceramic, and that's like a different data schema. So I'll have to like get organized about that as Ceramic launches. But yeah, definitely interested in sort of cross-pollinating there.
Yeah, for example, we're talking about this data schema for the skills. So we have like skills on the profiles, and so like then it matters like the way that you implement skills on your profiles.
Yeah.
Because if you make a new schema, then it's not really compatible, and the other way around.
Yeah. Well, we built this thing called Gitcoin Kudos back in 2018. This is back when I was like young and full of wonder, and I was like, what if we rewarded people with like the digital equivalent of a Hallmark card? So we have these NFTs that we sell for like $3 each. We actually don't sell them; the artists sell them, but like we're like the market maker. And like in terms of like the grand scheme of like Gitcoin features that people care about, Kudos has kind of been a flop. But we have issued like 20,000 of them, and so we do have like 20,000 data points of who has beaten what Gitcoin Quest and who has gotten what Kudos. So I don't know, maybe we could build like a translation layer between your sort of like skills tree schema and the Kudos thing. That might be a direction that's worth doing.
We don't like our skills are not based on like achievements.
Oh yeah.
So they're a separate thing. So the skills are just like you open a profile and you pick what skills do you have. So it's not actually there's no like verification of skills. But Kudos could interoperate with the achievement tree. So we actually deployed the Kudos contracts. They can deploy them on NextDive.
Yeah.
And then like first he deployed it for you, and then he also deployed it for the achievement tree, which is the achievement minting DAO.
That's cool.
Yeah, so we started this achievement minting DAO.
Yeah.
That's going to be used for rewarding people from the member DAOs and the wider Ethereum community.
That's great.
So the first member DAOs are like Raid Guild, Metagame, and Meta Cartel.
Oh, nice.
But he also airdropped the Chief tokens, which are the voting tokens for the DAO, to everyone who ever contributed to Gitcoin CLR.
I saw that. So cool. I'll have to go in and actually connect to my XI and see if I have any. I mean, I've contributed to Gitcoin Grants, so I'll have to pick those up. That's cool.
And so these, like the way we'll place these achievements on the profiles, probably we can do the same thing for the Kudos.
Yeah.
And have you seen the actual profiles?
No, I'd love to. If you don't mind sharing your screen, show it to me.
So this, the idea is that people can have their own custom backgrounds. So that's why they're this colorful.
I like it. Yeah.
But yeah, you have your regular bio, like your name and your profile.
Mm-hmm.
And this actually we changed this was based on enneagrams, which like personal archetypes. Mm-hmm. And now we switched on the Myers-Briggs archetypes.
Mm.
So that's what this will.
Is this all stored in 3box?
No, just the profile itself, just the basic data.
I see. Okay.
It's just we plan on using Ceramic, but it's just too slow right now. Yeah, so the player type, which will be the Myers-Briggs type now, the archetypes, and then there's the skills, the contact. The idea here is that people will be able to like have their own NFT gallery and use it to sell them. You have like the role, your time zone, your availability per week. Then there are the DAO memberships, the achievements, and this new section button are supposed to be able to let you add whatever. Yeah, I was trying to add this, like even the GitHub activity like we have on the Gitcoin profiles. But yeah, you should be able to pin like your articles, or just like eventually be able to have like DEP integrations, so just like use a block to interact with smart contracts. Yeah, basically the idea is that these blocks can be used to pin up whatever you want on your profile. So you can use it as a gallery or as a app store or wherever the fuck you want. So there's that, and the final piece is this like collab and trust. And the collab should be opening like a dialogue where you're requesting something from the person, and you enter like a staking situation where you start a contract and you set the arbitration to Claros or Heron Court. And the trust button is that like a sort of like add as a friend on Facebook, but if you have personal tokens, then you also exchange some tokens. So it's not just add as friend, but it's just add as friend with skin in the game. But this is just a design. That's like a long-term plan. These are just this is the live version.
This is what's live now.
Yeah, much simpler than that. But yeah, we'll get there.
Great. Yeah, y'all have clearly such an eye. Like, I think that me and you have sort of similar eyes for designs, like these neon color schemes. But the profile work that you've done is super beautiful, and I wonder if everyone in the metagame is going to be as expressive as you are in your profile with like the sort of like crazy neon backgrounds. My experience is that some people really like flair, but some people like to be a little bit more muted in their self-expression. So I'll be curious to see how that evolves as y'all go live. And I'm sure you have different profile backgrounds that you're going to give people options to use, but that's one thing that we've learned is, some people are a little bit muted in self-expression and some are like really, really out there.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the crazy side of things. But yeah, we should definitely like allow people to. There will be some like normal default ones, which will be like ranging from colorful to simple, and yeah, give people the ability to have their own wallpapers.
So I mean, like interoperability. So here's why this is important: is digital identity is how we unlock digital democracy in these systems. We move from one CPU, one vote to one human, one vote, and maybe we're like changing the relationship between capital and labor. Like labor can't be bought, whereas like capital can buy things. And so we want to build these economic systems where the value extracted scales with the value created. And reputation is like a super important part of that. But it's also subject to this network effect where until you have enough people in a reputation system, then no one trusts the reputation system. And no one trusts the reputation system until you've got people in it, right? So there's this chicken and the egg problem with like the network effect of it. And what's cool is that like Gitcoin's got X thousands of users, Metagame's got Y, and like if we can all just get them in 3box and like interoperable with each other, which is like, like sort of like the promised land, then I think that we're gonna be able to like all climb that network effect faster. But agreeing on a standard and like finding the time to do the integration work is where I think like for me things get stuck. And it's just like, we just have to bang it out, honestly. I think that once Ceramic is released, I'm not going to have the time to code it, but I could at least like push up a bounty where someone can do the translation or something like that. And we can like start to add liquidity. I don't like talking about like people's data as liquidity, but when you're building a reputation network, like that's what it is. Like these are all our humans. They're all like our friends. They're all three-dimensional humans, but like it's liquidity in a reputation system. So that's kind of how I think about that. And yeah, I mean, Metagame is like what, you guys are on the order of a couple hundred people now, right?
Yeah, like the whole Discord is 850. But yeah, we locked down the active players to Dunbar's number to 150. And then we have we locked it to the active players to Dunbar's number, but we also have like protected players, which is the people who came in as active players, but then they stopped contributing. So you need to have like a certain amount of seeds to protect your player status.
So you're like kind of like staking on like it's like a BRB like kind of thing. Like I'll stake my seeds on like I'm not active now, but I'll be active later.
Yeah, for that and for like people who like don't even want to contribute to work, but just want to contribute with money. And so that
what's the threshold? What's the threshold for an active player?
We haven't really come up with one yet. We just implemented that like less than 2 weeks ago, and now I just started going through the player list and contacted people like who haven't been active in a long time, and telling them, okay, there's 2 ways you can go. But yeah, I started cleaning up.
That's one thing that I kind of want to do in Gitcoin is like basically like add sort of like levels. So there's like there's two ways that you can do levels. I'm thinking of like the traditional Diablo 2 where it's like I'm a level 1 Paladin, and then I can go up to level 99 based off of how many skills and how I do in the game. But then there's also sort of like activity levels, which can go up, but you can also go back down, and there can be a decay rate. And I think that one thing that we're not doing really well right now is that like a lot of people with Gitcoin, like they just sign up and then they come back once a quarter to contribute to a Gitcoin grant. And so I think that one of the things that we could do is like kind of like recognize different activity patterns and provide different feature sets and rewards for people that are going through that. I've always thought that like Metagame does a really good job of this. Like you literally have game in the name, you're gamifying this stuff. So there's an interesting design thing there where you can create a lot of value by setting those expectations and those boundaries for people.
Yeah. It was just suggested the other day, and like I actually had this idea when I started Metagame, but I didn't. At that time, I didn't think it was yet worth implementing, but by now I think it is. The idea of having seasons, like in normal games, you have like a winter season, whatever season, and right now, like people come into Metagame, they see Hamad and I have like a shit ton of XP, and like a few top people that like look unreachable. And like I just, it doesn't look that you can just join game and be the first on the list. But if we had seasons, then like you can come in for a few months and you can be the winner for the season.
Yeah, that's super interesting. This may be like a little bit of an out of left field question, and I'm asking it to you and to me. Economic mobility to me is a super interesting concept. Anyone who follows me on Twitter knows that I tweet about the MetaView effect a lot, which is basically like this effect where the rich, it's the cumulative gains coming from accumulated capital. And basically what that means is that the rich get richer, but it also applies to other systems beyond just money, like reputation. And so one of the things that I've like kind of been really passionate about is like the MetaView effect, which is that the rich get richer. Systems consolidate over time towards more people, like a smaller group of people accumulating more wealth and the resources. How do you like change that law of economic gravity? Do we want to, and B, how do you change the law of economic gravity in it? I think that like that's one of the things I'm really passionate about discovering in this design space. Like if we can find that, I think it would be a really special moment because like clearly like you're the founder of Metagame and you deserve that XP. I'm the founder of Gitcoin, and like in Gitcoin's equivalent of XP, I probably have the most aside from like whales who have funded Gitcoin grants. But like how do you create economic mobility where people can work their way up into that top echelon just by virtue of efforts in creating values is like an open design question for me.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
One way to start
it is like you've gamified your onboarding path, so like you're clearly on the way to doing that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I wanted to say the first thing is to not do token farming.
Yeah, don't like capital, just get more capital.
Yeah, that's like a lot of people.
Do no harm, right?
Yeah, what did you say?
I said first do no harm.
Yeah, a lot of the people will have this liquidity problem. Yeah, so it's actually funny because we still have the money that we had back from the first CLR round because it took us a long time to start the liquidity pool and all that. And so now the problem is like we need to add those funds to the liquidity pool, but the treasury itself has no seeds. Like all the seeds are produced for the workers, so we have
to purchase them.
Yeah, we have to purchase them, but since there's no liquidity, like we can purchase them. So I wrote a newsletter that was titled "All caps, sell your seeds," and like with like a comma at it after each word, and like only 2 people contacted me, and one of them gave up. Like he didn't want to sell them. Like so, okay, like it's nice knowing that people don't want to sell their seeds, that they're still holding them after a year, but like we really need them. And so a lot of people started suggesting that we should implement the seed farming and just start rewarding people for providing liquidity. But yeah, I was against that for precisely that reason, because I think that would be just recreating the same old dynamic of the rich get richer. And the other side of the argument was like, yeah, but in our case, the rich aren't really rich. They're just the people who contributed the most to metagame. But yeah.
Which is like, time is the great equalizer, right? We each only have X number of hours per week, whereas like capital can be unlimited, money, print or go burr. So I think it's interesting to think about whether or not that would happen in a network where the currency is basically like proof of time spent. I'm actually looking, I just Googled the metagame seed market. I found a post that MetaDreamer did on February 25th, but I can't find the contract address for the seeds. I was going to go look at them on Uniswap and see if I can pick up some.
Are you on metagame Discord? I think you are.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you get there, just type in !, token.
Oh, there it is. Okay. So I'm about to buy with 0.5 ETH worth of seeds.
Nice.
That's going to move the market too much. Maybe I'll only buy 0.25 ETH.
I think you should move it like 5% or something like that, right?
Number go up. Cool. So you do have a set, like not a very liquid market, but there is at least some liquidity. Cool. I just bought some on one of my accounts, just a very small amount, just to have a small bag. But that's cool.
How many seeds is that?
I already closed the browser tab. Let's look. I think 14 seeds I just bought.
You need like 20. Yeah, you need like 20 seeds to be in the active players.
Okay. Damn, so I can buy my way into the active players, huh? Where did your... There we go. Okay, I lost the browser window for a second from what we're chatting. So I unfortunately have another meeting that I have to run off to. But yeah, anything else you wanna jam on? It's been fun to catch up.
If you had one advice to metagame, what would it be?
Oh man, it's so fucking hard. I think for me, so today is my 3-year anniversary at Gitcoin. Actually, 3 years of being funded by consensus and having actually people using it. I actually launched it in my basement in the spring of 2017, so it's 3.5 if you don't count that. But for me, it's just like this whole journey has taught me a lot about persistence and not giving up on the hope and the dream. And I'm glad that I've made it this far because the gains, I think, are exponential. Like this time last year, Gitcoin was doing like 120K per month of funding for open source, and now we're doing 500K. So, knock on wood, I don't know if that'll continue. Those gains will continue, but I think that it's taught me the value of persistence to really just be pouring my heart and my soul into this 5 days a week for 50 weeks a year for 3 years. And yeah, man, it's worn me down a lot, especially through the bear market when things got rough. But I think it's taught me a lot about persistence. And I think that if y'all believe in your dream, I think that persistence is a really valuable thing. And, Pete, I know you've been working on this for a year, and I've seen how persistent you are and how you've sort of developed since you and I were first DMing back in 2019. And I'm seeing it happen. So I think keep up the good work is my advice, as cliche as that is.
Awesome. Yeah, that's what I need to hear.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of downtrends in this whole year, where the time when I was like, is this worth it? But persistence in it, I think it is. Yeah, there's actually a bunch of things that I want to get into, like, will there be a Gitcoin DAO and things like that. But we will talk at some other time.
We can do some rapid fire. I can just tell my next meeting that I'll be a few minutes late. You want to do rapid fire? Like, go through those questions? If you have time, I don't want to put you on the spot.
I'll just ask you that one question, like, will there be a Gitcoin DAO?
I would like to make the users of Gitcoin into governors of Gitcoin, air quotes, owners of Gitcoin. I think the big question for that is how can we do that in a way that's compliant with the law here in the United States? So yeah, in the far future, in the mid future, I think it's something that we're going to try to do. I don't want to just be like Joe Lubin's project forever,
but how we get from A to B is a subject of active discussion, and I don't have anything public to say about it at this time. But yeah, hopefully in the future. I think that decentralization is in the ethos of this space, and the ownership economy is in the ethos of this space, and so it's a long-term aspiration for me. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good to hear.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for having me, man, and I'll look forward to the recording of this. I'll chill it out once it's live.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me, and see you around, dude.
Bye, Pete. See you later.
You believe it's morning, I'm alive, but that's the last thing on my mind.